Just got your new Sony a6000 series camera? Well, let's talk about how to set that up for photography. Hey guys, I'm Mike, nurse, photographer, and videographer, and on this channel I help new hybrid shooters master their camera skills through camera tutorials, gear reviews, and demonstrations in order for them to be able to create and capture high quality moments. This camera demonstration can be applied to most Sony a6000 series cameras, and for this demonstration we'll be using the Sony 6400. Alright, so I bought this camera used, so I'll be going down here and I'll be initializing, which is resetting the whole entire camera. Time codes will be in the description. Let's set the date and time. I prefer year, month, day. Enter. Okay, let's go into the menu. So over here, file format, I usually will shoot RAW and JPEG, just in case if I'm out traveling and I want to have JPEGs to send to my phone and post to social media or send to a friend. But most of the time, I will just import it into my computer, delete the JPEGs, edit whatever was good. But usually when I get back from a trip, I'll import the photos into my library, delete the JPEGs, and just edit the RAWs. JPEG quality is going to be extra fine. We'll leave the JPEG image size as the biggest possible. Again, we could always delete the files later. Aspect ratio, we'll use the biggest one, 3:2. Alright, next page, page 2. Long exposure noise reduction. I will usually add noise reduction in post in Lightroom, so I turn this off. High ISO noise reduction, I also turn it off for the same reason. Color space. Adobe RGB has just a little bit more color, especially when you're printing. So I will leave this on Adobe RGB. Lens compensation, we'll just leave it on auto and just leave it by default. So next page. Okay, drive mode, bracket settings. Interval shooting, that's like for time lapses, but that'll be for another kind of video. Page 4, we have our memory settings, we won't touch that. Page 5. Okay, they're priority set in autofocus singular point and autofocus continuous. They're both set to balance, but we'll set those to autofocus so that the picture is taken when focus is achieved, or at least when the autofocus has set its focus point in. Focus area, I usually set it to wide, but you can also change it to different points like center, zone, flex spot, where you can, flexible spot mode is like where you can tap to focus on the screen. I leave that alone. Alright, next page. AF Illuminator. I usually turn this off, but usually in dark settings. If you need more light to catch focus on your subject in dim lit areas, there'll be like a flashlight almost that shoots at your subject just prior to shooting the photo. Personal preference of mine is just to leave it off and just stay incognito as much as possible and just let people be in their moment or subject be in their moment. Face eye autofocus. I leave everything on. Next page. AF with shutter. I usually set that on. Leave it half pressed just to get the focus, and then you can shoot. AF registration, we'll leave that off, and we'll skip this page as well. Okay, I usually leave everything here default. Next page. Next page. Same thing here. Red eye reduction off. White balance, I usually set to auto, but if I'm sitting in a studio setting like this, then I'll use the custom white balance. Like right now, my Kelvin's probably at 4300 Kelvin. But if I'm out and about shooting, usually I'll just leave it at auto white balance. And because we're shooting raw, I can choose the white balance, whether it's cool or warm, later on when I edit. Auto HDR, I leave that on. Creative style, I also leave it on standard because again, we're editing in post. Picture profile, we definitely leave off and we just leave it for when we're shooting video. Soft skin, shutter auto white balance lock. Yeah, I turned that off. Okay, focus magnifier time. All right, so when we're shooting manual, it's kind of hard to gauge what's in focus, especially with these small screens, whether you're using the viewfinder or if you're using the back screen monitor. So here I set my focus magnifying time. I usually set for like 5 seconds. Initial magnification, I usually do like 1 times. Manual focus assist, I leave that on. Peaking setting, I also turn this on. I'm gonna go in here, turn it on. I usually have it on high and put that on red. So one of the things that will help you get your subject in focus when you're shooting manual is to actually highlight your subject in whatever color that you choose. So in here, it's gonna be red. So if you want to get my eye particularly in focus, you're going to get something that's near to my eyes, which is like my glasses. If you want my face blurry, you want to get the background, then the background will be highlighted in red. Okay, next page. Face registration, I leave that alone. Smile shutter. Oh, I forgot that this had this, but yeah, I usually just leave it off. Self-portrait timer, this is specific, I think, for this kind of camera where you can have the flippy screen. Like so. I don't take too many selfies. We'll just leave this on. All right, let's go over to camera settings 2. Most of these are movie settings. We'll go to the page 4 on camera settings 2. Silent shooting, I usually leave off, unless I'm like in church or trying to be incognito, like street photography. But just for the whole shooting experience, I prefer to actually hear the audible sound of the shutter. I'll leave E front curtain shutter on. I'll leave this on. Next page. Zoom. We're grayed out here, but anyway, I don't usually use it for photo. Okay, so for page 6, Finder frame rate, which is the viewfinder here. I just leave this on default. Okay, grid lines. For me, I like to use rule of thirds and exposure set guide. I usually turn this off. Leave this on, auto review off. Unlike the DSLR days, we don't need to chimp or at least look back and forth to make sure that our exposure is set. What we see on the screen is the image that we're gonna get. So we'll leave the settings just as they are. Okay, so for page 8, we got custom buttons. This one's for photos, this one's for videos, this one's for playback. I will usually leave this as default. Over here, IAF, the center button, drive, ISO, exposure compensation. Good thing, focus mode. As you get to familiarize yourself with the camera, you'll get to see which buttons that you use most often and where it is most ergonomic for you to put certain buttons. But for photography, I usually just leave this as default. But please do go through it so you can see what buttons are set to where, so you can have a better idea of what custom buttons are enabled when you click them. Okay, let's go to function menu setup. Drive mode, focus area, exposure compensation, ISO, metering, shooting mode, raw JPEG, creative style, white balance. All these modes right here are already set for you and they're very photo specific. I'm gonna leave these alone until I need to go change for my video. Okay, so for the dials, this is the aperture and then this is the shutter speed. Custom operations, dial wheel, and we leave this off. Movie button is always on. Yeah, we'll leave those off. On page 9, we leave everything as default except for audio signals. Turn that off. Before we get to the last section, give a like if you're getting value from this video so far. And let me know down in the comments, what series camera do you have and what do you plan on shooting? All right, let's jump onto the top tabs and we'll jump over to setup 1. Monitor brightness, I will usually leave this on manual, but if we were going to shoot on a sunny day, I would turn this to sunny weather. And now the screen is significantly brighter, but we'll leave it manual for now. Viewfinder brightness, you can check in here, but we can leave it at auto, and it's already set to that. Finder color, temperature, leave it alone. Leave this alone. Volume settings, leave this alone. Tile menu, if you want to see this settings in tile menu, you could leave it on, like it'll look like this, if that's visually easier for you. Otherwise, I'm just gonna turn it off because it's just an extra step. Page 2, I leave everything default except for power save. I will usually just give it like 2 minutes, especially since this is a smaller battery compared to the A7 full frame cameras anyway. Okay, page 3, default, leave that alone. This one we'll leave alone, except for this one, which is the infrared remote control. We will turn this on if you have a remote control. I do, so I will turn that on. If you want to take a picture of yourself without having to press the camera and run back into the frame, good investment by the way. Okay, over here. Okay, we'll skip over to page 6. File numbers, I usually leave it as series. File name, you could leave it to whatever you want. I'll choose my initials. Okay, that we'll leave alone. Folder name, I choose date form. We reach page 7, okay? Now if you're gonna get into video, I recommend this video where we dive into how I set up my camera for video.